The world of Zenith was a sick fuck, and I didn't have to go any further than the board screen for an indication that something was wrong with Zenith. The first thing I noticed was the blood-red texture of the board and the music, which was an eerie whistling tune. I noticed that I had Solomon and Anguirus back, and I felt better for a second. Then I scrolled over to the right to see who my enemies would be this time. This time, it was Destroya and Ghidorah, but judging from the icon, it was a different Ghidorah than the original, lying on the ground instead of standing on. The grotesquely detailed pinkish red icons also caught my eye. I couldn't tell what it was supposed to be, and I was afraid to find out. Going back to my side of the board, I decided there wasn't much choice but to do my usual routine, in going to the two bosses and a final encounter with the Hell Beast. For some reason, I thought Ghidorah would be easier to beat, so I confronted thing to do before the game would be over. Seeing the icon again hit me like a ton of bricks, and I froze for a few minutes. I had come so far to get to this point, but I was terrified. I really did not want to know what the last encounter was going to be like. Before I could let myself think about it any longer, I moved Godzilla over and began the stage. You're here now. This is the end. Just one last thing, and then it's all over. Nothing. Just Godzilla and a black screen. I walked back and forth, fired a heat beam. Nothing happened. Until I heard something. The faint sound of a familiar drum beat. Dear God. That was my first thought on realizing I would have to fight
Green,
the creature that had tormented me through nearly the entire game. How would I be able to fight something that can kill me with one touch? It seemed totally impossible. Thankfully, Red was no longer able to deliver one-hit kills, but despite that, this was still the most difficult battle I've ever faced, in this game or otherwise. If I had any real comprehension of what I was getting into before I started the fight, I would never have done it. I very soon learned what a horrible mistake I had made. Red reached out and clawed at Godzilla, and when those claws cut through him, I felt it. I know that it's common for people to cringe up when the video game character gets hit or loses a life, but this was not that. This was genuine physical pain.
now that's a lot of damage!
I paused the game. I hadn't suffered any actual injuries, but it felt just like my shoulder had been clawed into. I had seen and experienced many unpleasant things at this point, but the game causing me real pain was where I drew the line. Yes, I would be disappointed that I wouldn't get to see the ending, but the risk was no longer worth it. I was about to get up to take one last screenshot and turn off the NES, when I realized something. I couldn't get up. I was paralyzed in my seat. The only muscle I could move were my fingers and thumbs. And as the terror set in, a new message appeared on the screen. I had to kill Red. Solomon apparently had some history with Red, as when the fight started, this dialogue happened.
I'd rather die than disturb you.
Red took me by surprise again by immediately burning me with his demonic fire a second time. As much as it hurt, it actually worked to my advantage. Since Solomon started at full life, he still had some to spare. But now Red had used up all his energy and could not use his ultimate weapon any longer. Now he would die. As he drew close to the end of his life bar, Red turned his whole body to face the screen and flew upwards, then slamming back down in an attempt to crush Solomon. When that failed to work, he tried to devour Solomon like he had Mothra, but he wouldn't be eating my monster this time. I struck Red with one final blast of Solomon's heat beam, and then he slunk to the ground, burning and withering from the heat beam. I thought I had won, but something was wrong. Red wasn't sinking to the bottom, and I still couldn't move. Red was still alive. After his seeming defeat by Solomon, Red had reconstructed his body into his giant form, transporting us to a blazing inferno in the process. It was reminiscent of our first encounter, except now the scenery, much like the true power of Red, had become very real. The music had erupted into a loud, blaring sound of a furious drum. Faced against Red's insane amount of health, my own demise was imminent. Solomon was my strongest monster, but not even he stood a chance. It was like trying to fight a mountain. Within seconds, Solomon was overpowered and dropped to the floor when Red crushed him to death underneath his foot. The sadistic demon took his time as he snapped Solomon's vertebrae and ribs like dry, brittle twigs. I could tell he was enjoying our pain. This is hopeless. I'm a dead man. I had no choice but to send another monster to his death. We were all going to die. I only hoped they would forgive me. After decreasing Red's health by a minuscule amount, Anguirus was also obliterated. Red unleashed a hail of blazing hot needles to his face until he collapsed. Another moment of unspeakable agony, then nothingness as my ally faded away. I asked Red how he knew my name, and then he said it.
I'm dead.
For years, she was being tortured by something nobody understood. And now I knew what it was. Now I understood why I was mocked about Melissa's death, and how the game knew about it. Because he knew about it. Because he was the one responsible. And this time, he was going to kill me. I was taken back to the board to send Godzilla to his final stand. Barely anything was left of the board, just Godzilla and Red's icon. And the fifth monster.
Everything was happening. I completely forgot it. I tried to get him selected. I cursed, I begged, I screamed, I did something, anything to help me. To no avail. There was only one thing to do. Much like the previous monsters, Godzilla stood no chance. After releasing a wave of fire from his hands, Godzilla's health was drained, and he too, like Mothra, was devoured by Red. I knew Godzilla didn't stand any more of a chance than the rest did, but maybe now that all the other monsters were gone, the fifth monster might finally awaken. I managed to get the creature's icon selected, and I pressed the A button as fast as I could. The icon started to shake, as if it were trying desperately to move. It was then that Red decided he was done playing fair, and before I could activate the monster, he went for the killing blow, paralyzing my heart. My hands started to become numb and unfeeling, but even as my vision was fading, I still tried to press the A button. Red surely was breaking one of the rules, but he must have thought that if he could kill me quickly, then it would be too late for any consequences to matter. He would have won. He was wrong. Red's power was being challenged by an outside force. It prevented him from killing me. And when I regained my vision, I saw a familiar sight.
Zach, we don't have much time.
Who are you?
You already know me. I am Melissa.
What? How is that possible? Red told me that he killed you.
It's true. Even after death, he tortures me. If you can't stop him, he'll do the same to you.
But how will I be able to stop him now?
I can't fight Red, but there is one who can. I will release him from Red's grasp. Don't give up. I love you.
Her words stirred something inside of me. I wasn't going to die like this, and I had more to fight for than just my own life. I had to fight to save Melissa and the world she inhabits. With her help, the fifth monster was finally unleashed. It was time to end this once and for all. We would take this damn hellspawn out of existence. Acacius was by far the strongest playable monster in the game. He had to be if we had a chance of surviving. His punch involved turning his hands into blades, which caused tremendous damage. He also had the ability to fire lasers from his face, as well as star-like projectiles from his hands. And even the ability to fly, much like Solomon. Instead, he could levitate in the air. Red had more than enough life to spare. In the end, this would come down to pure skill. And finally, with one final strike, Red was destroyed.